Good morning once again. We are continuing to look at those stories which are unique to St. Luke, and this one is a very special one. This is how Jesus parts from his disciples at the end of his ministry on earth. Luke chapter 24, verses 50 to 53. And he led them out as far as Bethany. There he lifted his hands up to bless them, and while he was doing this, he parted from them and was carried up to heaven. And back in Jerusalem they were filled with joy. They were in the temple all the time, giving thanks to God. Well, there are signs here that Luke's Gospel and the Acts of the Apostles, as we have them, were works in progress. This is Luke's first attempt at researching the resurrection, the ascension, and the events of Pentecost. He had no personal recollection of these events. He only used the pronoun we, including himself, from Acts chapter 16 onwards, when Paul's mission reached Macedonia. His subsequent research filled out some of the details by the time he began writing the book of Acts, however, and there is more refinement and a wider time span given to these events in the first two chapters of that book, which allows time for the events in Matthew and John to take place. In this hurried description which we've read today, Luke mistakenly placed the ascension of Jesus right away after the resurrection appearances on Easter Sunday, joining the ascension to the Easter Sunday appearances with a simple "and," giving no indication of the time in between. In my translation, I've included the words "and was carried up to heaven." Now, these words only come to us in some of the ancient manuscripts, and I have included them because I think they fitted in with Luke's former pagan beliefs that the gods of Olympus made a habit of coming down and taking a human or some other form to interfere in the affairs of humans before going back to their lofty abode. Mark has nothing like this. Matthew has Jesus commissioning the disciples and then saying, "Be assured, I am with you always to the end of the age." And John has Jesus dwelling continually in us and we in him. To everyone but Luke, he doesn't go back to heaven, he stays with us, just in a new way. So I believe Luke took on board the criticisms of his earliest readers. In the Acts of the Apostles, he gave a much more adequate time span of 40 days, Acts chapter 1 verse 3, for the events between Easter and Pentecost. And after his farewell promise of the gift of the Spirit, a cloud removes him from their sight, while angels direct their attention from the sky back to the earth, with an assurance that Jesus could come just as he had gone. That's why I think the words "and was carried up to heaven" were removed from the Gospel subsequently by scholarly scribes who noticed the discrepancy. Luke knows nothing of the tradition preserved partly in Mark and more fully in Matthew and John that Jesus met his disciples again in Galilee. Matthew doesn't mention Pentecost at all, but John does have a mini Pentecost on the Sunday after Easter. You can read about that in John chapter 20, verses 19 to 23. And neither Matthew nor John has an ascension story quite like either of Luke's. By the time Luke was writing, there was not yet a fully developed doctrine of God the Holy Spirit. What Luke does have is a description of Holy Spirit as the power from on high promised by the prophets, especially in Joel chapter 2 verse 28 and the following verses. So Luke ends back in the temple where his whole narrative began. Well, that's the end of Special Luke. Tomorrow we begin a new series in our Bible studies as we begin to look at the special contribution the Gospel of St. John has made to our understanding of Jesus, his 7 signs, and the teachings that are attached to them. And I'll see you then.